people are over there, no matter from which side, are really scared to death of being overburdened, overwhelmed by the sheer extent of the crisis, which can really happen. The other dimension of this comparison for me is what came up in this workshop in Sarajevo. That's the possibility of international intervention to end the crisis, and then what comes after, and we'll touch upon that briefly. Intervention was a few months ago almost done deal. It will happen, something will happen, something will be done, and then those who intervene will have to resolve the crisis. And that's why so many of these workshops were convened to see what happens. In terms of intervention, I don't think it's going to happen, and all of us, I think, here know that it won't happen at least as the things go on. I mean, for different reasons, of course. And for me, judging by the nature of the proposed intervention that was circulated just, what, a month, 2 months ago, I think that the worst thing that could have happened to Syria was the type of the intervention that was proposed. And that's not all-out intervention as it happened in Bosnia, with the ultimate target set at changing the situation on the ground and imposing a solution, which happened in Bosnia. But as Mr. Obama said, a limited, short time, short goal, whatever intervention. Basically, go bomb a few targets, pull back, and see what happens. That's disaster. That's like the worst thing that ever could happen in any country of the world. Like, if you go do something to the end. I mean, what was floated in Syria for different reasons was a type of limited intervention, which in my opinion would make the current refugee situation look like nothing compared to what would have happened in that case. And finally, intervention, even if it happens, would be profoundly different in nature, because intervention that happened in Bosnia came at the very end of the war. War was already drawing to an end. Adversaries were exhausted, were weak, and there was no appetite for fighting. It was very easy to pressure the sides to actually end the conflict. And there was no so much regional involvement as is the case right now. And there was this excellent brochure that I read today, it was circulated over here, about the extent to which Iran is involved and interested in the crisis. There's the issue of Hezbollah, there's the issue of Turkey now, there's the Kurdish issue, there's this Israel, and all that stuff. So it's not that easy. And intervention in Syria was always bound to be opposed. Intervention in Bosnia wasn't opposed, basically. It was token opposition. And once they bombed the place and showed everyone that America means business, they went in, but they went in when everything was settled already. There was no single combat-related death by the international coalition in Bosnia. I mean, most of the people who died there died in instance traffic accidents because they were, drinking all the time and doing, what soldiers do when they are not fighting. And fortunately, they were not fighting in Bosnia because issues were settled. This was never going to happen in Syria. Okay, what comes after intervention? I think it's a key issue here, and that's why, I am invited to say something, because I'm from Bosnia, and that's where the Dayton, unfortunately, was applied. Dayton, for a long time, and Bosnia in general, was how would I say, America's or Western success story. I mean, we were the ones hailed as, wow, see, this is what happens when the West decides to intervene and to put an end to the conflict. And a few months ago, you had all these, killings and bloodshed right there in Europe, and right now we have peace and coexistence and blah, 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 which is obviously not the case. As I said, the war was drawing to an end because people are tired of it. And the thing is, Dayton was accompanied, once the conflict ended overnight, literally, was accompanied by the massive, absolutely massive intervention, judging especially by the scale. Bosnia is a really tiny place, 51,000 square kilometers. At the moment the war ended, there was less than 3 million people in the country. And then the huge amount of money, expertise, assistance by all sides. Bosnia was kind of really everyone's case. I remember there was a Kurdish humanitarian organization helping Bosnians. I mean, EU was there. every possible humanitarian agency in this world, aid agency, was there helping us, which really overwhelmed Bosnia, made the thing stable. I mean, Bosnia lived for 10 years, for a decade. The economy was based on the internationals being there, renting apartments, working, spending their money in the country. That's why we are faring so badly now, because internationals have left. But all of these developments have actually masked what really Dayton is. And Dayton created a place like no else in the world. I mean, I'm not going to go into details. I suppose you are familiar with the basic outline of the Dayton Agreement. Suffices to say that it is the only country in the world that has unlimited veto power given to, all three sides that, form the country, which is not the case anywhere in the world. There is no unlimited veto power in political science, full stop. I mean, basically, you can exercise a veto, but there's always a way to override it. In Bosnia, there is no. And that has actually created a paralyzed country, a country that lives, but it doesn't really live. I mean, ever since the 1995 Dayton Agreement until the present day, we have been stuck in the same cycle of trying to resolve the basic issues that beset the society, and we are still unable to resolve them. And that really makes the life in the country miserable. As I flew in here, I passed by kind of a large demonstration in front of the office of the High Representative in the country, and there was a group of Bosniak students from primary school kids from Republika Srpska who are denied the basic right to listen to the teachers in their mother tongue and being taught their national history. That's the issue that was being resolved in '95, and still talking about it. And I can go, of course, more into detail. But I'll try to wrap up. Yep. What's important for me is that Dayton stabilized the country, put an end to the conflict. It's basically a ceasefire agreement, but it was awful blueprint for creation of society. Why? It is basically society which, whatever we argue, whatever the point is, live together. I mean, we didn't live parallel histories. We did live down history, whatever the ethnic and religious identity is over there. It created a society that was so divided right now, that basically has turned people who are so much alike and indistinguishable by anything you think, language, culture, appearance, and everything, into virtual strangers who are less and less cooperating, and it provides a fertile ground for a future conflict. I remember when I was studying Malaysia is a share of inter-ethnic strife, as you know, in the 60s, and they were asking me, like, okay, there was Chinese, Indians, and Malays, and very easily to distinguish who is who in the streets, and said, okay, you Serbs, Croats, and something, can you actually recognize on the street who is who? I mean, different color, skin color, something. I'm like, no. Do you speak different language? No. Different culture? No. Different food? No. Different place to go? No. So what are you fighting over? Strangely enough, 20 years on, as we mature, we are turning into different communities, and I'm really afraid of the future. I mean, that's all based on the data, and it's not going to be resolved. There's so many more things to say, but yeah, threatening look from the left, and I'll stop here and invite your questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You'll get the chance to answer the questions from the audience. I think I wouldn't sum up what the panelists say, but I think that we have to make a small emphasis here about the need for institutional buffers among the communities in order to make their common life together. We may question the particular case of Bosnia as a construction of institutional buffers, but nevertheless, that kind of institutional buffers serve the need to actually to respond, first of all, to the challenges of security, and on the other hand, to respond to the need of democratic representation in a common state. I think that Valeri Ratchev could reflect upon those issues in more detail. I have actually mentioned his present institutional affiliation with the Academy of Science. At the same time, Valeri Ratchev is a very good expert on security issues, both on the Balkans and in the post-Soviet space. And afterwards, he has been, for a full mandate, ambassador to Iraq. So his personal experience and personal knowledge is unique in order to reflect upon that kind of a comparison. Valeri, please. The floor is yours.
And thank you. Before Iraq, I believed that I know everything. Now I doubt in everything. Anyway, colleagues, I would like to put the topic of this panel under the so-called continuum between security and democratization. Some people believe that the right words are security dilemma or a dichotomy, but I think that this is really a continuum between security and democratization. Let me remind you that during the Cold War, both the Balkan people, or East Europeans as a whole, and the Arabian people, we were living under one and the same paradigm, and this was the paradigm of security. Security was above everything. Security and stability was the price that our society, our people, our generations were paying to the global order in this moment. So from this point of view, from the starting point of view, we do not have difference. Our experience was very similar. Probably in the Arabian world there are only two exceptions of this model. One was Lebanese case you talk about, and the other was some political liberalization that happened in countries like Egypt, Morocco, Bahrain probably, etc. But in our area everything was extremely and completely fixed on the security dominance of security. With the fall of the Berlin Wall, this construct was destroyed, and the Balkans enter into a period where security and crisis were the main characteristics of the situation. Everything was within the context of security and within the context of the crisis. We were living enough long time to have, how to say, children of this development. This development gave born to issues like the following. Please, this is very important to understand why the experience of the Balkans is valuable for the Arabian countries. First of all, artificial paradigms of the transition from authoritarian towards anything else. Artificial paradigms. This country gave born to unthinkable paradigms of the island of security on the Balkans, Switzerland on the Balkans, bridge between East and West, bridge between civilizations, etc. Nothing worked. These were completely artificial. Also, the role of the state during the transitional period, the role of the state in national economy. No role. Everything market, everything private. The country that a couple of years before was completely centralized became completely liberal. We pay unthinkable price of this wrong paradigms. Second point was this fantastic common expectation of the strong hand. This strong hand will come from somewhere and will give order, will put everybody and everything on his own right place, and this strong hand will make us European. Democratic, prosperous, rich man, free, etc. But somebody with strong hand will manage our life. The third, what came is the fact that the crisis management replaced the normal politics. Everything in the country was based not on long-term planning, systematic political effort, systematical investment, etc., but everything was managed as a crisis. The difference between the crisis management and systematic policy, I can't speak slowly, sorry. The difference between the crisis management and the systematic policy based on critical thinking is that crisis management never changed the system. It accepts that the system is right, well constructed, something happened, we will solve this problem, and the system will continue to exist. This is a great philosophy. I don't know who discovered this, but as a practice, this is fantastic mechanism to squeeze the people, your own people. And I think that living in these conditions, we made several important conclusions. The first one is that security and over-securitization of the life of the people could be a never-ending story. If you enter into this way of life, into this style of politics, you will see that you always can find something to make extremely important security issues and to apply crisis management solutions in order to avoid systematic policy. Because systematic policy is a policy that is accountable to the people. In one moment, people will ask you what we achieve under your leadership, what you achieve with our money. Crisis management is completely different. So if you look at the countries in the world, you can find countries that are living in a crisis situation since the very beginning of their existence. It's a very, very dangerous perspective for any society. The second one is that this over-securitization gave birth to a national elite that learned how to benefit from the chaos, from the lack of well-established rules of the game, rules of political and economic life. These are the people that use the political situation in terms of private benefit, and I could say serious private benefit. As a way of living, the impact on the people was on, I could say, systematic democratic deficit. Extremely great gap between the agenda of the elite and the expectations of the people. If you walk outside on the streets of Sofia, now you will see a lot of simple explanation of this gap. The people in the parliament and the government have completely different agenda than what the people want to see from them. And this is one of the most dramatic impacts of the wrong transitional period. So transitional period should be carefully managed, should be properly managed in order to transfer the transition into stable and secure development for the people. If you allow me, I can say that the following: security and democratization continuum is the right. Security itself and democracy understood as a freedom and power of the people, they are human values, no any doubt. But in order to use them as an instrument of real policy, we have to be extremely precise. Independence, territorial sovereignty, integrity, territorial integrity, borders, constitutional order. We were ready to pay every our own in order to provide security and stability for these attributes of the state. If you look at the Arabian countries, if you look at the African countries, if you look at the Central Asian countries, many of them have a completely different social construct of the security issue. Security is also value for them, but they think completely different way. And because of this, our approach towards providing security does not work. It didn't work or limited work in case of Bosnia. It does not work in Iraq and will not work in Afghanistan, because the construct of national security is just opposite what the people expect and what the people have in the minds and the hearts there. The second critical point is that we understand mostly democracy as an instrument for reform, for change.
It's extremely ambitious. It's extremely unrealistic to think that you can go to Iraqi people or to Afghanistan people and to say, okay, we will push you with democratic reforms. We did this before during the communism. We did this with the Mongolian people, with the people of Ethiopia, of Angola, of Nicaragua, of everywhere. We did it. We failed. Why do you think that democracy will succeed? No, this is the same. To give freedom and to give power to the people is extremely important, but you should do in accordance with the realities on the ground. The same with the international aid we provide to these people. We will provide you this money, but if you do the following democratic reforms. These guys do not understand these democratic reforms, but they understand the money. And they say, okay, we will apply this, but give us the money. And we know what to do with the money. Look at Iraq. Iraq has a 126 billion budget annually.